Hey, good evening, everybody. John Bars, realtor and mortgage lender with Foundation Mortgage and Evolve Realty. And I've got Andrew Pudlow here, who owns Premier Property Solutions. He's an accredited investor, been doing this for several years, very successful in his field, starting to do new construction now. And we're here today to talk about how to buy and hold real estate using the BRRRR method. If you listen to Bigger Podcast or any of the other real estate podcasts, you've probably heard of the BRRRR method. And it stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then the last R. Sometimes they leave that last R out, but repeat. We don't want to just do one-offs. We want to just keep the cycle going and make more and more money. So we're going to be talking about this because this is the, I don't know if you'd agree with me or not, this is kind of the foundation of buying and holding real estate, is using that proven technique.
Definitely a wealth hack for sure.
Yeah. A little bit about my background. I spent 7 years in the military. Then after I got out, I spent the next 17 as a firefighter, paramedic. Retired in 2020. Got bored and went back to work, so now I'm doing this. And I've been very blessed to build a network of just strong-minded, like-minded individuals who are just wanting to grow and build wealth through real estate. And so I've been very fortunate. This is one of my best friends and a very experienced investor. Thanks for being on here today, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tell us about yourself.
So I was talking about it earlier. Basically, I was in the Army for about 13, 14 years. And while I was in, I was like, I mean, the pay was nice, but it wasn't going to be forever. It's not the forever gig, and I needed to find a way to where I could live financially free. So while I was in, I had a rental property that I had bought to live in, and then because I moved, I rented it out, and I was scared about, you hear all these stories about landlords. Oh, you're going to spend all this money, like the toilet's going to break, and then the house is going to, cave in, and all these horror stories. But I rented it out for 7 or 8 years while renting a room for my buddy, and never had any issues. I mean, I got fortunate, so I'm like, oh, maybe I need to do this again. And I was using VA loan, which is a wealth hack for anyone in the military. Like, if you want to get started in real estate, you have the Willy Wonka's golden ticket to start.
Absolutely.
The best rental you could ever have before it comes to BRRRR is buying a house to live in it, intending to live in it for a year, and live in it for a year, fix it up, but then rent it out, and then you can use your VA loan again and again and again. Or you can use FHA, conventional, whatever. But that's kind of what I did. And while I was in flight school, I needed something else to keep my mind calm when I wasn't studying. So I started listening to Bigger Pockets podcast. And there's a book written on BRRRR investing by David Green, who is the lead host of Bigger Pockets podcast. And I would listen to that. If I wasn't studying, I wasn't listening to music. Even in the gym, I was listening to Bigger Pockets podcast over and listening to a new one and trying to pick up. And each time I listened to it, I picked a little more up. So while I was still in the Army, I started trying to acquire more houses than I did, but I medically retired, and then that's what I do full time now, is whether it's house flipping, renovating houses, and now I'm starting to get into new construction. So that's a little bit about that path, and it's intoxicating. It really sucks you in.
And that's how I met Andrew. I was a home inspector at the time, and through another mutual friend, I ended up doing a lot of the inspections for his houses that he was getting ready to buy, and we would do a pre-inspection before you bought it to kind of give you an idea what you needed to fix. It's kind of a honey-do list, if you would.
Yeah.
Like, we got to make sure we hit these, because when we do the inspection on the back end, these won't be an issue, and it'll make it a lot easier to sell. Mm-hmm. If a buyer gets a home inspection and there's not much on it, it looks like it's a very well-maintained home. It makes them feel a lot better than getting a 72-page report. And I did have houses that had 72-page reports. Mm-hmm. So it's nice when it's like 1 or 2 pages and it's little things that are easily mitigated. But that's how we got together. And then I got talked into getting my real estate license, and then I became a mortgage lender and a hard money lender, and it's just been nonstop light speed ever since.
Yeah, that's true.
But so when we're talking about buying and holding real estate, we talked last month, if you were here or listening through the live feed, we talked about creative financing, and we had Rosemary Calcese on here, super knowledgeable lady, and we talked about all the different ways outside of conventional lending to buy and hold real estate. And then the meeting before that, we had Eric Yao on with Yao and Associates. And he kind of gave us a overview of all the different ways you can invest in real estate, from fix and flips, wholesaling, buy and hold, to new construction and residential development. We touched a little bit on all that. So building on those on that foundation, now we know how to finance the deal. So when we're talking about buying and holding real estate, you can either go through that by buying a distressed property and fixing it up yourself, adding value to it, and then renting it out, or you can just find one that's for sale that's you look at the market rents, right? And if you can get more for rent than the mortgages, you've got what's called a cash flowing property. Doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1,000. That's a cash flowing property. And I've worked with folks who have bought houses that made no money. Mortgage was $1,800. They could rent it for $1,800, and they still bought that because that's a real estate asset that's going to appreciate in value. And you can also raise the rents every year, typically about 4 or 5%. But what are some of the other benefits of buying and holding? What would you say? Besides just the cash flow.
I mean, flipping is what I do now, but really it's just until I find one I can keep. Flipping is a way to generate take a large risk and generate large amount of capital if you do it properly. But a bunch of money sitting in the bank is lost money. You're losing money on it. So the key is putting that chunk of money under a roof, into real estate, because in real estate, the buy and hold is you make money 4 ways. A lot of people think it's, just the cash flow. Everyone, when you're talking about rental property, you're thinking, okay, what's the rents I can get and what's the mortgage? But that's not true cash flow. What it is you actually have to take into account vacancy, capital expenditures like your roof, HVAC, big stuff, and then other expenses that are the smaller things like the water leak,
property management.
Yeah, tree falls, like that stuff, right? So you set a percentage or away from that. And then property management. Are you going to manage the property yourself, or are you going to pay a company? Then you have to, so when you analyze a property, it's not, the mortgage is $1,500 and I can rent it out for $2,000. You take, like just for example, I would take, if I were to take 10% of either one, and, let's see, if you're getting $2,000 for rent, you take 10%, that's 200, 800. So that property is negative cash flow if you actually account for all those expenses, because those will come around.
If you're not managing the property yourself, the average property managers take 10%. Mm-hmm. So that's just to take care of everything. So and capital expenses, you really should be putting money away, because your three biggest expenses are your roof, your HVAC, and your windows. Mm-hmm. Windows, you're probably not going to become an issue immediately, but roof damage,
it's going to happen. Like it's not a matter of if, it's when. So you can buy a house and get lucky with a few things, but you're going to spend money. So really what it comes down to is to me, so that house would have to have 800 on top of the 1,500 to be worth it. Really, you want to be, renting it for 25, right? So the BRRRR method, where it kind of kicks in, one part of it is you really start with the ARV of the house. You look at a house and you want to know
that stands ARV for after renovation value.
Yeah. How much is this thing going to be worth when I'm done? Because without anything else, nothing else matters. Then what you want is you want your total cost in the property to be 75% of that. So you take your ARV times 75%, and that's this is how much it costs to purchase it. If you're using private or hard money, these are the fees, these are the closing costs, this is the renovation target, and you lump that all together. Now, if it's less than 75%, the reason you choose 75% is because at the end of this, you want to refinance that property and have zero of your hard-earned dollars still left in the property. It's a wealth hack, and it sounds illegal, but it's not. It's total black and white, totally legal. If you do it properly, you can get a rental property for free, like no actual cash out of your pocket. It just takes a lot to do it.
So if you do what he's talking about, when you do hard money, I do hard money loans for folks. So you came to me and you said, I want to buy this property and it's going to cost $200,000 to acquire it. I've had a contractor go in there and he gave me an estimate, $50,000 to renovate it. And I talked to a real estate agent and they did comps on the house. And after it's done, the ARV is going to be, let's say, 350. Okay. So I would give typically, now there's some differences and different hard money lenders. Typically, you're going to need to have 20% of the purchase price. So you're going to have to come up with $50,000. They're going to give you 80% of the purchase price, and then they're going to give you 100% of that renovation budget. And you're going to pay holding costs. So you're going to have an interest-only payment for those months while you are renovating, and those are called your holding costs. So by the time you're done with that project, you can then refinance it, but you're refinancing it at that new valuation of 350. So you can get typically 25 to 20%, you can get typically between 75 and 80% on a refinance.
That's where the 75% is coming from.
So you can pull that down payment you had in it out. The refinance will pay off the hard money loan, and you've gotten your cash back. Now that it's just sitting there with just a loan. It's a 100% loan you basically have. Yeah. Now that's the payment you need to look at and whether it's worth renting it or not, or selling it and doing a flip. And now, there's a lot of different calculators out there. I like the bigger pockets when they have on there.
The bigger pockets, you go on the website, there's free calculator, you can use a bunch. The tools on that are just invaluable. But the big thing is like, why? Why would I jump through all these hoops? Well, what's stopping most people from buying a rental property today? Money. It's the down payment, right? 20 to 25%. That's what's stopping everybody. So when you do this, you buy the ugly house because ugly houses make money. You find the ugly house, you fix it up as long as it doesn't need too much, as long as you can keep it under that 75%. You can use the best money is OPM, other people's money. Like if you can use that and it's not even out of your bank account, you don't realize that. And if your cards all align and you do it properly, you get to that 75%, you do refinance on it, you pay off that loan, any money you had, you get back. Any money if it's other people's money, they get their money back. Everyone's happy. But now you got a rental property that's now updated and you fixed all the problems with it. You've touched it. You've seen it. If it needed a roof, you put a roof on it. It needed HVAC. So now it's the best rental property you're going to get that's not a brand new construction house because you already fixed everything that's wrong with it. Mm-hmm. So now you know it. So when you put it into service, into getting rented, you know it's solid. And you have $0 in it. And then here's where the kicker is, what most people in the stock market want to make 10% on their money. They're, excited 10. Oh, I made, my money manager got me 12%. Well, what's the ROI, return on investment? If you have $0 in a house and it appreciates $100,000 over the next 5 years, 10 years, it's infinite.
Yeah.
Plus the cash flow. Plus,
talk
real
about
estate,
the other ways that you the rental properties help you financially through appreciation, depreciation.
Yeah. So in buy and hold real estate, and this is why I believe in it more than flipping or really anything else. You make money 4 ways. Most people only think about the cash flow, which is income, gross income minus expenses is what everyone forgets to account for, and they under account to church it up and make themselves feel like they're getting cash flow. It's not real cash flow because as soon as HVAC comes, it wipes all that out. That account's empty, right? So I go very strict. I have a calculator, and I would rather, err on the side of caution, and then at the end of the year, that account gets filled up, right? So there's cash flow, and then you have appreciation. As we've seen in Tennessee, you look at there's inflows and outflow states. Tennessee's an inflow state, just like Texas and other. Like, where are people moving to? That's where you want to buy and hold because, in general, the Fed has a goal of 2% inflation per year, which means, in general, houses and stuff, on average, could inflate at 2%. But obviously, in Nashville and Clarksville, surrounding areas, that has blown that completely out of the water. And it's going to continue to do that as long as people are moving here. Things may happen. Economy may crash, all this doom and gloom you see in the news if you watch it, it could all happen, but you can't plan for that, right? You can only plan for what you can control, which real estate, over time has always proven, even if it comes back down, it's coming back up. So you make money, cash flow, you make money appreciation, the tax benefits. If depending on your job and depending on your CPA and your circumstances, the tax benefits are huge. And when you get enough rental property, you go from paying a lot in tax to a lot less. All those rental properties, there's, not to say a bunch of, but there's cost segregation studies. There's a ton of ways.
We're going to have a CPA on here one month, and
Yeah.
they're going to go really deep dive into all the financing and depreciation and taxes. We are not tax consultants. We're not lawyers.
And you're still paying taxes on the houses. The government's still making their money, but now you're taking some of that money that you would be paying in just normal, ordinary income tax, and you're keeping it in the bank account to keep recharging it and putting it into houses.
The federal government looks at that asset like it's going to depreciate over time, when in fact it's appreciating. And as soon as congressmen and senators stop buying real estate, that law will probably change. But while they keep doing it, the loopholes are there for everybody.
Yeah, and then the fourth and final way is loan pay down. Like, at the end of the day, you're not paying the mortgage on this. Like, so, it's like your car payment, except for a car depreciates, a house appreciates. So, someone else is paying the payment as long as you're keeping it rented, 5-10 years, depending on the interest rate, they easily pay off $100,000. Now, that $100,000 didn't come out of your bank account. They were going to pay rent to live somewhere anyway. That $100,000 is now your $100,000 plus the appreciation plus everything. It starts snowballing. So now we all know we want buy and hold real estate. It's a wealth hack. For us that are never taught this in school, like you could come from nothing and you could become a millionaire for sure. But it's like, okay, now how do I get 10 doors? How do I get 50 doors? How do I get 100 doors? Right? And it has to be scalable. Yeah, that's where BRRRR investing comes.
Yeah, you're going to need to get process, and this is going to be a trial by error. You could listen to Andrew talk about it. I could bring 20 guys up here. I know that do this. And I bet all of them would agree that you need to have a process in place. You need to have a good calculator that you're using that's going to take everything into account. So you're doing the same method every time. So you're not getting burned. And what I hear a lot of guys talk about, they have a buy box. Like this deal may not work. This deal's not in my buy box. It's not in the right neighborhood. It's not cash flowing enough. I don't think this particular area is appreciating the way I want it to. But it may not work for me. But then I toss it to Andrew. He's like, oh, this is in my buy box. Maybe he is willing to accept a little bit more risk, and I'm a little bit more risk adverse. So the other part of this is networking with other real estate investors. Because one of the biggest surprises for me is how candid everybody is in these groups.
They're very helpful.
Yeah, they'll tell you anything you want to know.
Yeah.
So
the more successful they are, I've learned, the more they're trying to help out is the ones that are either trying to get started or just started or not really that knowledgeable. Those are the ones that feel like they're holding on to the secrets. And like that's Bigger Pockets podcast, and they're writing books and they're giving all this info for free. It's free info. It's out there. You could go watch every episode and be an expert on it in 6 months.
And that's what Grid is all about. There's another real estate investing group in here, and it costs a few $100s to be a member of it, and then you never really get everything. You show up there and it's more of a sales pitch. Buy my coaching, buy my book, So this Grid was just designed by Rob Chavez in Northern Virginia, who had the exact same experience with the group. And you're going to get everything here. You just got to show up every month, and you're going to get the entire recipe A through Z. If you want to become a wholesaler, you'll learn how to wholesale. You want to buy and hold, you're going to learn how to buy and hold. You want to flip, we're going to talk about all that. But Grid is kind of just taking that Bigger podcast formula and just put it in person now. And now we can network together. Maybe that deal doesn't work for me. And I'm like, you know what? But I know you guys are looking for your first one. This might be a great one for you to start off with. And toss it to you. Here you go. So that's just how that networking, your network is your net worth kind of thing. What are some of the pitfalls to buying houses, whether it's flipping or buy and hold? What are some of the mistakes that?
Your attitude determines your altitude. So if you see a plumbing leak and you're like, oh, of course, I knew something bad was going to happen. Like that's going to be something bad to you. To me, plumbing leak. Okay. How bad was it? perfect. I'm glad we found it before it rotted out all the floors and the walls and everything else, and then everything falls through the floor. Like, to me, it's life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. So when you find those pitfalls, or I find those mistakes, I'm excited because now I'm going to be better the next time something like this happens. I have more experience, and now next time I'm dealing with that problem with that experience. So my first ever attempt at a BRRRR was a failure, what I was telling you guys. And not in a failure in the sense of life, like, oh man, I failed, but I didn't BRRRR it because I messed up. So a buddy called me, hey, I found this deal. They're going to want it. If wholesaler, I think 160,000 will win it. I didn't have the money. I figured it out later. You know, I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to do this. Okay, I'll go look at it. I walked the house. This was my first, I mean, I've looked at houses. I have a couple houses, but I've never flipped a house. You know, I walked through it. I'm like, yeah, seems good. I feel like, you know, slap some paint, slap some floors in here, throw a renter in it, and we're done, right? No. So I got, you know, I got the house, and this is how I met John. I called him to, a lot of flippers don't really do this. But at that time, I didn't have the experience. I was still in the Army flying helicopters, so my focus was elsewhere. I'm like, let me get an expert, come look at it. So I paid him to come inspect the house. He's like, yeah, this is your laundry list of stuff that's wrong with it, you know, before you either keep it or sell it. I'm like, perfect. So now I have a starting point. This is where we go. In the kitchen, I don't know if it was a fridge. There was a water leak somewhere, but the floor was a little soft. So I'm like, okay, cool. We'll just pull up the floor covering, and then we'll fix a soft spot. Get the floor covering up. This water damage had been there forever. Get some of the subfloor up. There's broken floor joists, you know, and everything else. And I'm looking at the crawl space. The crawl space is just disgusting and everything else. And I'm like, the more we pulled the onion back, the more layers we were like, and it's all dollar bills. It's all dollar bills. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to be the kind of landlord to just cover this up and just, you know, slap lipstick on a pig and call it a day. So I'm like, we're all right here. We got to fix it. So, and we ended up having to rip the cabinets out because the floor was rotted underneath that. We were replacing floor joists. We did all this. And at that point, I realized I can't hang on to this property. I'll have too much money into it. And then I can't take my little bit of capital I did have and keep multiplying it. So then I was like, okay, cool. We'll flip it. We'll just make it nicer than I planned on. We'll make this thing super nice and then sell it and try to make a profit, which we did. And I think, you know, it ended up being my first flip house. I think I only made like 15 or 20,000, but like I was stoked. I was like, you know, because at one point I thought I was losing all the money that I had saved up. Mm-hmm. So that's how BRRRR, like, and if you analyze a property properly, like I knew I needed this number to BRRRR it, but I knew as a backup plan I could do this number and flip it. So if you do it properly, like with real estate, you can make mistakes and still make money.
I think that brings up a really good point, though, that you were flexible enough. You didn't stay rigid to your plan. That when things went a little awry, you're like, okay, and you were flexible enough to pivot and still turn that into, yeah, it's a win. I mean, you make money selling a house. You're winning. You know, you didn't lose money. Yeah. It didn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to, but you took those lessons forward. You still made some money, and you carried it forward on the next one. So that's a really great point. I think you know when you're doing this, when you're in this game, you've got to stay flexible, and as you get experience, you're going to start looking at deals through different lenses. And maybe you find a house. You know, you're driving around, and a lot of folks call it driving for dollars. You just go driving through neighborhoods. You look for that house with the gutter hanging down, the grass all grown up. You know, it might even be a car if you weed eat enough and you can see it back there. A lot of people are like, I wish the city would do something about that. Real estate investors, they're skip tracing that. They're trying to find the owner.
About it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to find that owner. I'm going to skip trace them. I'm going to call them. What do you want for it? You know, you can look up city records to see if they've got a bunch of violations and citations and find out if they're behind on the taxes, because that's all ammo for you. When I call that owner, hey, look, I noticed you got like 15 violations for the grass. City's going to charge you, an arm and a leg to cut that for you. You know, you got a lot of maintenance. It looks like 50, 60,000. I mean, I'm just spitballing here. You know, I can take it off your hands. What would you be willing to take for a cash offer? And then you just pause. And you wait. And you never know what's going to come out of their mouth. You might say 150, and you're like, yes. You know? I mean, because there are times where, people pass away, the house gets left to some family member in another state. They don't know what to do with it. They have no idea. And it just sits because it's just easier to ignore the problem than deal with it. Well, then you came across it, you found them, and they get a phone call out of the blue. You offer the average person $100,000 that doesn't know anything about the house, didn't, nothing. And they take it. Yeah, well, that's a strong offer for somebody who's just sitting in their living room and getting a random phone call. So that's just driving for dollars. You can look at the tax sales for the different counties. You can talk to different wholesalers, and they'll email you. They do a lot of the work for you. A lot of different ways to get into it, but looking at each deal through different lenses and being able to say, is this a good flip? Would this be a good buy and hold? Should I wholesale this?
Multiple exit strategies.
Yeah.
That's what you have to think.
And if you can fit that in one of those different boxes and make money on it, I mean, that's the whole goal.
Yeah. You think when you start a project, you think you know what it's going to end up like, and when does it ever? Like you learn things along the way, and being flexible enough to pivot when you need to. That's how you survive. And that's how you're going to take, like when I bought that house, when I said, yeah, man, I'll give you $160,000. He's like, all right, cool, man, it's yours. When do you want to bring us a check? Like, well, let me call you back. And then I had to go find the money because I didn't have it. But like the thing with listening to all those podcasts all that time and just getting it beaten in my head, money's easy to find, money's easy to find, money's easy to find. I found 2 people that day that were willing to give me that money. And it blew my mind because I never looked for it because I wasn't ready to pull the trigger. And then I pulled the trigger. I'm like, jump out of the airplane and build your parachute on the way down. That's how I've lived my life. And that's what got me started here.
Would not suggest that.
Yeah. And it's
Really?
It worked out, because you can will it to work out. And, with a BRRRR property, it's not a failure if you leave money in the deal. If you buy a $100,000 house and you had to put 25% down, you'd lose, that $25,000 is gone. It's out of your savings. It's out of your, checking wherever, and it's tied up for a while. If you BRRRR a property and you have to leave 10, well, now it's only 10. That's a lot easier to swallow. It's not a failure. It's still BRRRR because you're not paying 25%. And the more expensive the house, a $200,000 house is, 50,000 and so on and so forth. So you can see, like, would you spend 10,000 to have a cash flowing door right now? I think everyone, or you could find the 10,000 and make that work.
If you could leave $10,000 in a real estate asset, whether it's a house, a quadplex, an apartment building, I mean, that is a real estate asset that you've acquired that somebody else is paying down for you, and you've got $10,000. And when he says you've lost it, you haven't. It's like that house is a bank for you, and that 10 grand is in there, and you can wait until they pay the mortgage down and it appreciates, and then refinance it later and pull that money out. And that's what a lot of the investors I work with on the finance side do. They refinance their houses, their assets every 5 years.
Keep it at 80%.
Yeah, so you can pull all their equity out, and then they take that money. Their intention is to never pay that house off. Mm-hmm. They don't care because somebody else is paying the mortgage, and they're getting the depreciation value, and it's appreciate. But they keep pulling that equity out and buying more real estate assets with it, because these are just little piggy banks now for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're cash flowing, but maybe they only cash flow $300-400. I mean, that's a house, but that's not the real wealth builder.
But if you have 10 doors cash flowing $200 to $500, a month, then if one door goes unrented for 2 months, you're not sweating it. But if you have one rental property and it goes unrented for 6 months, or even if it goes unrented for 1 month, a lot of times there's your entire year's cash flow gone. That's why you put that money aside, and that's why I made my goal, because I knew I was probably getting medically retired out of the Army, and I was like, all right, well, I need other income. So I was like, okay, well, my properties I have now are roughly $200 to $500 a door, so I need 10 doors, $2,000 to $5,000 on top of retirement. I'm like, that's a good life. I can make that happen, and that's what I started chasing. And so you put I had a vision board, and put it up there, and that was the goal. And I looked at it every day, and and then built tiny steps. What is it going to take to get my first door? Or not first door for me. I had a few, but like next door. And I had a little sheet of paper with this logo. I printed it out and put it on the desk, and I put 5 little houses. And that year, I checked them off, and then at the end of the year, I got to add 2 more. So.
When
You just have to visualize it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, when I sit down with somebody and they tell me they want to get into real estate investing, what's your goal? What's your end goal? A lot of times I hear, I want to get rid of my W-2 job. Like, okay, so how much do you make a year? All right, so now we have a dollar amount. And let's say you're making $60,000 a year. Okay, so we need to start working on a plan that's going to end up with you cash flowing $60,000 a year. All right, not, it's very doable.
Attainable.
So then, all right, how soon do you want to do that? Well, I want to do it in a year. Okay, well, that's not happening. So let's get realistic. That would take an extraordinary amount of effort.
Well, how much extra time you got?
How much extra?
We got to start tonight.
So, typically like 5 years, 10 years. Okay, so let's build backwards. So if it's 5 years, then we need to get you $12,000 a year, right? So $12,000, and then we just start building backwards from that and trying to come up with a plan. If it's too aggressive or it sounds too aggressive for them, you see their eyes get real big, like, I can't do that. Okay, why don't we stretch it out to 10 years? Now, that's a lot easier, $6,000. And then, the next question, so we build back. Now we've got a plan in place and we can start, looking and start sending them, sending them deals. This is what I think this is worth, things like that. And then we find the financing too. That's not, that's just the process I go through when I'm talking to real estate investors who want to get in the game. But, and you hit on this, like what you were going to do with the house on Rotary you just sold. You were going to live in the basement and rent the top floor up. It's house hacking. It's a great way to get into it. You can use an FHA loan or your VA loan if you're not a veteran, or conventional, any of the conventional products. You can buy a quadplex. And with like FHA, you only need 5% down. You live in one of them, you rent the other 3 out. The other 3 rents are covering the entire mortgage and then a little bit more. So you have a house for free. Mm-hmm. And you have this big assets now. You got 4 doors on your first buy. Instead of one offing and one's in twosing it, you can house hack a quadplex or a duplex. And then after a year,
or a single family home.
Yeah, or a single family home and rent the top floor out and you stay on the bottom floor.
So that's what I did. So, using VA loan, that's the same thing I was telling you. Everyone's like, oh, you can't have more than one VA loan. Oh, you can't have more than one in the same town. Oh, you can't this, you can't that. I did it all. You have to know what the black and white is and get a good lender. If you're going to get into real estate, you have to have a good realtor, a good lender, a good CPA, and really a good lawyer. But all the title companies.
Good therapist will help too.
Yeah. So I said before I left flight school, I wanted to buy a house, used a VA loan, bought it, 0 money down, moved here. They're like, hey, you're deploying. Don't even unpack your bag. I'm like, okay, put a renter in it. A renter stayed there and rent kept going up. That thing cash flowed. The mortgage was $1,000 a month. For the first 2 years, the rent was $1,800. The next 2 years, it was $1,950, and I should have been renting it for $2,300. But I never had to worry about it. Never got any phone calls, so I wasn't, it was hands off. Then, less than a year later, before I came back from deployment, I wanted to buy another one, and I found, like we were talking, an ugly house. Like this was an MLS listing, and I remember it vividly. It had, I want to say 2 or 3 pictures, a fuzzy iPhone #1 picture from the front, everything's overgrown and everything. A picture of an in-ground pool that was covered, and like, I don't even remember. And I'm like, Matt, I need you to go look at this house. It's in the right area. It's a corner lot, big lot, had a in-ground pool, 3-car detached garage. It had a basement, which that's what I was looking for, because at that time, I wanted to use my VA loan to buy a multiplex, duplex, triplex, quadplex. But in Clarksville, you couldn't find anything. And if you did, you were overpaying for it. They were so sought after that they drove up the prices, and it didn't cash flow. It didn't make sense at that point unless you're playing long term. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to house hack, which David Green, who wrote the Bigger Pockets, the BRRRR book for Bigger Pockets, talked about house hacking all the time. It's a wealth hack. So I was single, just have a dog. So my plan was to live in the basement and rent out the rest of the rooms. So that's what I ended up doing. I fixed the upstairs, and then I moved down in the basement. I rented the upstairs rooms. And then there was a single car attached garage that I ended up rebuilding the floor, leveling that out, adding a bathroom, adding a closet, had a side entrance, adding its own AC, turning it into an Airbnb. So that was 3-4 years ago. And I've since moved out. We rent the downstairs, the basement. I put kitchenettes in each one too. and the main one has a kitchen. We rent the downstairs separately to, travelers, travel nurses. We rent the downstairs for $1,300. We rent the upstairs for $1,500, and the Airbnb consistently brings in, $1,200 to $1,800 a month. That's on one single family house that, that to build the Airbnb cost me $15,000, and in 3 years it's made over that every year. That is on a 2% interest rate on a VA loan. The monthly mortgage is less than $1,000. So plus utilities and everything, it's like a little less than $1,500. But the cash flow we get from the Airbnb, the upstairs and the downstairs, all combined, the cash flow is $3,500 a month. So I think the gross, depending on who we have in there or how much they're paying, $4,000, $4,500. So I mean, it's more work, but you can use these properties to generate the cash flow if that's what
Can't find a duplex, make one.
That's it. And I heard that on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and I'm like, okay, pivot. Let me start looking for single family homes with a basement. And everyone's like, well, you want to do an Airbnb in there? Oh, you want to split it up? Oh, that's weird. And now, like, that thing is a cash cow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You still have that one, right? Yeah, you still have that. That's the one you still have. So right now in this market, it's not easy to find a cash flowing property.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're the guys who do buy and hold, things have become a little slim right now because the market has driven prices up so high. Rents haven't gone up in correlation with that. So finding a cash flow property is not as easy as it used to be. Now interest rates start dropping, market makes a correction, things like that might come around. But, to your point, having a good realtor or finance, having your network, having your group there where they're sending you deals and finding something and they know what you're looking for so they can keep their eye out on things. Because a lot of times, especially realtors who are in the investing world, they'll get what's called pocket listings. Like my buddy, he's got 6 triplexes in Clarksville right now. He doesn't want to list them on the market, but he's like, if somebody's interested, I'll sell them. That's a pocket listing. So if you've got a realtor who can do something like that, like, hey, you're looking for a triplex? I've got 6 of them, and here's what they want for each one. So that's another reason to have different people. Get involved with people who are into this game and who are doing it every day. They'll definitely help you out and get you started in that. And then finding a good finance person, because there's a lot of different hard money lenders out there. I work with one that does 90% instead of 80% of the purchase price, but they do 90% of the purchase price and construction budget. So you only got to bring 10% to the table, and they defer all the payments to the end. So if it takes you 4 months, whatever your monthly payment would have been, they just tack it on to the end and it comes out of the proceeds. So you don't have any holding costs. So shop around for those. Some of them are different. Some of them have different credit requirements, and things like that. So to the point of financing these, you don't have to use if you're not a veteran, you don't have a VA loan. Mm-hmm. FHA,
Same thing, you have to intend to live on it.
Yeah, you have to have the intention of living there. So if you want to stay on the up and up and you're not having any intention, there's another loan product out there called a DSCR loan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's
debt service coverage ratio.
Yep. So that loan product is specifically and only for investment properties.
Here's what I'll argue. DSCR is great, but to a point, like, each individual person gets 10 government-backed loans. A married couple gets 10 each, right? So if you're being creative with it, that's going to be your lowest down payment option.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
when that comes into play. Those government-backed loans, totally legal, going, black and white. You move every year. You could get 10 doors, 10 years, and they all turn into rental properties. You'll have a great life and never have to worry about paying the bills. Most people don't like being inconvenienced. Everyone hates moving. No one loves it. I move a lot, but for a purpose. That's the cheapest way you're going to get a rental property. BRRRR investing is the other way, right? But really what it comes down to is the only reason we're doing all this and finding the ugly house is because so you don't lose that 25% down payment. So you're being creative so it's not coming out of the bank account. That 25% is still in there. And you get 10 of those, and then that's when you get into the DSCR loans where maybe your income doesn't support, because we're going to get in the weeds here, but there's Fannie and Freddie backed. And the more doors you have, the more reserves you have to cover all your doors. So the financing starts getting tricky unless you have a high-paying W-2 job. So the best time to buy real estate is while you could get loans with high-paying W-2 income because it could prove you can pay the bills, right? So that's what they say, don't quit your day job, which, I didn't get the memo, so I screwed that up. So that's why I know when I have 6 stores, Fannie guidelines are this, Freddie's this, so you have to live in the confines to get financed. That's where DSCR comes in handy because DSCR, they're looking at the numbers on the house, not on your income.
If you're FHA or VA, we're going to be, I'm a mortgage lender. We're looking at your debt to income ratio. We're looking at your finances, your liabilities, your personal house payment, your car payments, all your credit cards. We're looking at you personally if you're doing FHA, VA, or conventional. The DSCR loan, I don't care about any of your personal finances.
Is
your credit score above 680? And are you going to cash flow $1 more than what that mortgage is going to be? You're qualified.
But here's one of the problems with that, right? So secondary loans, investment property loans, DSCR loans, those incrementally the interest rates get worse, which eat into the cash flow, which may mean that you're losing money on monthly cash flow, which might be the difference between you buying that or keeping that house and get rid of it. So those government-backed loans, that's going to be your lowest down payment, a better interest rate and everything because it's more secured.
Yeah, the DSCR interest rates are higher. They are typically a point or more higher than what conventional loans are. Right now, DSCRs are sitting right around 8.5%. And I haven't found anybody that wants less than 20% down. So you do have that. But if you've already got a bunch of government loans for properties, or your debt to income is really high because your credit cards are maxed out because you're doing some flips, which that's not uncommon. You run your credit cards up to do a flip, you sell it, you pay them all off, you rinse and you repeat. So your credit score is constantly doing this fluctuation too as your credit usage goes up and down. I do like the simplicity of the DSCRs. Most of them are a 30-year loan. You do have interest-only options, which if you're doing interest only, then your payment's obviously less. There's a new lender I'm working with. They have a 40-year DSCR loan. The first 10 years are interest only, and the next 30 are principal and interest, taxes and insurance and all that. So it stretches the payments out. It lets you cash flow a little more in the beginning. And honestly, you'd never let it go past that 10 years and hit it anyway. You just refinance it out and do it again and again. But it's another option out there. If you do have the 20% to put down, I do quite a few DSCR loans. But I also think, if you're using FHA, you also have that mortgage insurance that you have to have. So that's another $100, $200.
Until you're below 80%.
Yeah, until you're below 80%. Until you have more than 20% equity in a house. So for the first couple of years, if you didn't put 20% down.
Unless you BRRRRed it because you have 25% equity already.
Yeah.
So you don't need.
Yes. If you did that, then you can,
then
you can do FHA.
of BRRRRing the property.
It all depends on how you acquired it. If you acquired it by flipping it, you put the 20% down and all that, and then you wanted to get that, yes, absolutely. But if you're I found, 102 Main Street, I just want to buy it outright, doesn't really need anything, it's turnkey, then you're going to have to navigate that with the mortgage insurance, which might cut into your cash flow a little bit. But as soon as you get 21% equity in it, you can refinance it and you don't have mortgage insurance anymore.
You don't even have to refinance it. You just
that is lender specific. I found that out.
Yeah, and some of them is literally you pay $600, you get an appraisal, and if they say you have 20% equity, it's gone.
Some of them will make you refinance because they want those closing costs.
Yeah.
So once you start snowballing and you get your processes down and you're doing the single family homes, it seems like there's a natural progression with folks who are doing this to start then buying multiplexes. And then once you get a few of those, then I see them graduating to like apartment buildings where you're buying a significant number of doors all at once. What's your plans going forward?
You guys ever play Monopoly?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about it, right? What's the goal? Like, if you're just the person that goes around the board, collects your 200, are you going to win? If you're just collecting your paycheck and you're not buying properties, do you win? But if you're the guy that gets your 3 or gets your Park Place and Boardwalk, and then what do you do next?
Start buying, putting houses on
You
it.
put houses on it. And
Then you
and then what
graduate
do
to
you
a
do?
hotel.
You start putting more doors and more doors, and then you go hotel. They gave us the key to the game. We've been playing it since kids. You know, like the more doors, the less risk. And I haven't dealt with this, but basically they say whether you're buying one door or 100 doors, the work is the same. It's just you're adding commas and zeros. That's the only thing. And now it's not looking at your personal credit and what your W-2 income is. It's looking at the deal. So that's why they get into the apartment complexes, because it's just the
exact same process.
Yeah, same process.
It's the same
It's
formula.
going to look at what the apartment makes, not what you make.
I like multiplexes. You know, if you've got a quadplex, it's one roof. You know, it's one foundation. You've got an apartment complex that's got 40 doors. You know, they're all right here. It's a lot easier to manage that property. You've got all the same water heaters. You got the same stoves, the same everything, you know, versus 40 different single family homes in 40 different locations. And you're trying to manage all of that. And, you know, that can be pretty daunting.
That's why mostly they take the duds and start weeding those out, 1031 exchanging them, and then selling those to buy more cash flowing doors.
So 1031 exchange, you sell an investment property, there are certain parameters, and I don't know all the guidelines on this. So.
Yeah, it has to be $1 more than what you sell the house for. You know, you have to identify and close the property, identify within 90 days, close it within 6 months. I mean, there's some details, right? But essentially, if you make $100,000, if you sell a house and you're making $100,000 on it, you're not getting rid of the tax burden. You're just deferring it. The government's like, okay, cool. You're going to take that money, put it into a more expensive house, and we're going to get more money at the end. So you sell it, and I've done it. And I 1031 exchanged my first property I ever bought. I was renting for 8 years in Clarksville, and I sold that and bought a fixer-upper duplex in Nashville. 1031 exchanges. So I took $80,000, put it into this tax-free, and then put it into the duplex. So it's another tool that you legally use, not to escape taxes, you know,
to defer them.
Yeah, we're going to pay taxes, but let's say hypothetically you die and leave it to your kids and they sell it, they're not responsible for that tax burden. That tax burden is now gone. So, yeah, just kind of knowing the black.
Yeah, you don't want to sell a house for $100,000 and have to pay capital gains on it. Yeah, we don't want to give them that much money.
Yeah, and depreciation recapture too.
Mm-hmm. So, I lost my train of thought there on that one. When you're evaluating a property for BRRRR, what are some of the things? How do you start out? You see a house. What's your process for evaluating whether you're going to flip that or BRRRR it or just take it into consideration at all?
Just to keep it simple, ARV. Get a realistic ARV. Pick 5 comps within the same neighborhood that have all sold within the last 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. You know, take 3 that are sold and closed. Take 2 that are pending or listed. Take those because that's what an appraiser is going to do. Because at the end of the day, we're planning this around hoping and guessing what an appraiser is going to do. And if there's one thing I've learned, you can't hope and guess what appraisers are going to do. You're always going to be wrong. So
I had a house right down the street from here within the last 3 months, and we had 2 different appraisals within 3 or 4 weeks of each other. And there was a $52,000 difference in the appraisals.
Yeah.
So it's a very subjective world.
Yeah, some you can't waste headspace on. And so basically, can you confidently say this thing's going to be worth it then? Okay. Can I buy this house, fund it, renovate it, and go to refi it? Can I be under 75%? If it meets those 2, I'm going to try and BRRRR it. If it doesn't meet those 2, okay, cool. Do I still want to flip this? What can I make for flip? And then I pivot. You know, or, you know, you can use the Bigger Pockets calculators on their website. I mean, they're free to use. That's what I started with. And you just, realistically, you just need to get in there and start analyzing properties. Even if you have no intentions on buying them now. Like, you need to analyze 100 properties. Like, anyone that I talk to, and that's to get your first door. Like, anyone I talk to, like, oh, I want to get a rental property. Okay, well, how many did you analyze today? Well, none. Like, well, there's your answer.
It is good to practice that, especially when, you know, if you watch HGTV and all those things that do the flips and all that, they make it look so easy. You know, it's just like, why isn't everybody in here's room doing it? But when you turned me on to that podcast and I got on the website and I looked at that calculator, it factors in things I would have never thought of.
Yeah.
And I would have gotten myself in a lot of trouble had I just looked at the cash flow as purely, this is what the mortgage is, this is what I can get for rent. Oh, wow, I'm cash flowing $1,000 rent. No, sir, hang on. Are you going to manage this yourself? Well, do I want that phone call in the middle of the night that the toilet stopped up? Do I want to have to run credit and backgrounds on people and show the house 20 times before I get a renter in there? Do I have the time while working a W-2 job to really do this and do it right? Or you're going to take 10% and you're going to manage it all for me and handle everything. If something's broke, you're going to call the plumber. And all I got to do every month, I'm just going to collect the check and you're going to call me if big things pop up. Yeah, take that 10%. Please. Thank you.
You can't scale if you're doing it yourself. You do it yourself to start out, to save money and keep it. But in all honesty, it holds you back from scaling and getting more doors because you're dealing with those problems. Don't deal with $20 an hour problems. Deal with $100, $1,000 an hour problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Focus on the acquisition. Don't focus on, something that someone's going to take $200 a month and take it off your plate. It's worth it.
Because you're going to put more than $200 worth of your time in it every month for what they're going to do. And they're making money by scaling. They don't manage 10 doors, they manage 400 doors. But they've also got the contractors. They've already got the network lined up to get that fixed and deal with all those problems. They have the apps. They have everything that makes things very convenient for you. And you can take that headspace you dedicate to that and find your next deal. Yeah. But I like what you were saying. If you, just randomly pick houses and start running them through that calculator and seeing what they are. You see a deal, you're going through the MLS, you're going through Zillow, or you get with a wholesaler and they're starting to send you deals. Start running them through the calculators. Maybe you don't have any intention of buying a rental house in Murfreesboro because it's too far away from you, but it's still good practice. And then when you're finally ready, you're like, okay, I'm pretty good at this now. This looks pretty solid. And you're getting that confidence and you're going to feel it. You're going to know. And then you're like, okay, the next one we find that looks solid, we're going to pull the trigger on it. And that's going to be your hardest one because of all the unknowns. You pull that trigger on the first one and it works out because you've done all these reps. You've done your homework. You've got your network. You're good to go. And it works out. You're like, okay. Then you sit down after the deal. After you close, you get renters in there. What went right? What went wrong? What are the lessons learned? Okay, apply those lessons. Do it all over again. And now you're in the game and you're playing. Now you're scaling. And you can scale as slow or as fast as you want. You can buy a house a month. You can buy you can buy a house a week. If you've really got your processes done and you've got a good funnel system sending you deals. I like that I've got a few wholesalers that email me every day with deals. And now they'll send you a deal and they'll say, okay, here's the ARV, here's what we think the renovation budget is, and here's what you can get it for. Ignore all that. None of it is true. Their numbers are very wishful thinking. Yeah. Whatever they're drinking, I'd like to have 2 of them. But that's where you look at that deal, you take that deal, and then you run it through your own calculator, and you look at it through your buy box. And if it works for you, then you make an offer on it. But that's just a good way to get properties that want to be sold. They're distressed. They're not in good shape. They need some work. That's a great way to start out getting them.
Yeah, when you analyze a few hundred properties, you'll start walking them, and then you keep analyzing them and walking them, and then it'll get to the point where you walk a house, and 30 minutes later, you know what it's worth, you know what it's going to cost to fix it, you know what you can refi it for. But that's why they harp like analyze properties, like that's what's really going to take you from wanting to do it to doing it.
And if you find somebody, a good handyman who can do just a jack of all trades, or you find a general contractor that will take the time to go walk a property with, if you've never fully renovated a house or you're not very handy, it doesn't mean you can't do this. It doesn't mean you can't flip a house. It just means you need to find the right person who's, going to be reasonably charged. Their charges are reasonable and they're going to stick to what they quoted you. You don't ever like a much higher bill at the end than what they quoted you, but things are going to pop up. But if you're analyzing a deal and you're not very familiar with the renovation process and how much things cost, have a contractor walk through with you and have them give you an estimate. You're only going to need to do that a few times because have them line item the estimate where flooring, paint, what the roof or the HVAC. And then pretty soon you're not going to need them to walk the property. You're going to go, okay, that HVAC's 18 years old. We really don't want to Band-Aid this thing. So it's usually going to be about $7 to $10 grand, depending on the size and everything. All right. New windows. probably 10 grand. Floor, if it's, a 2,000 square foot place, what would you say?
Depending on the floor coverings, but call it $5 a square foot.
Okay. So you're looking at 10 grand there for floors. You'll be able to start getting a feel for that just walking through. Okay, paint, we know is $2, $3 a square foot. We know the square footage of the house. Floors, all right, we need new floors, new paint. Do we need new appliances in the kitchen? I think we can salvage that one and that one, but we know we can go to a scratch and dent place. It's going to have a dent on the side, but nobody's ever going to see it because there's a wall there. And we'll get that cheap. We'll get that replaced and we'll have it, stainless steel match or whatever. So you're going to get a really good idea of what eventually you're going to get to the point where you can do that and guesstimate it. Now, whatever you come up with personally, my suggestion is add 10% to that for fudge factor.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I think it really comes down to it, and that's all accurate information, but you don't have to do all of that. Like leverage other people. Like what I was saying earlier, building your Avengers super team, call a few realtors, vibe it out, see what they got, and they're probably going to feed you a house if they think you're going to do it, but also ask them, do you know any general contractors? All realtors know handyman.
I've got a vendor list.
General contractors. They can tell you who's good and who not to call, because it's not the $100 an hour plumber that costs the most money. It's the $20 an hour plumber, because then you have to call the other guy to come fix it. So, network, find, you need the Adventure Super Team. So you need a good loan officer, you need a good realtor, you need a good general contractor, and you need a good property manager. You find those 4 people, you don't have to know everything. You just have them look at it.
You can really do this at that point when you get that, you get comfortable and there's trust built there. You can do this from your home at night.
They do.
You get home from your W-2.
Long distance investing. This is what most investors, even BRRRR, out of state into other states. And they call up those 4 people. You find 4 of them good, especially, and even better if they work together. And then you let them go. You let them do their job. You put trust in people and, see.
Really, I mean, I would, from my point of view, the ideal situation for someone getting into this is to find a realtor who's already got a team built. And then you're like, start sending me your pipeline. Send me something that you think is going to cash flow, or it's going to make some money on a flip. And then they've already got the general contractors, and then they know a Rosemary Calcese or an Eric Yao who's who own title companies and they're real estate attorneys. And they're like, yeah, okay, you need a general contractor. All right, I'm going to send you Andrew, and he's going to go to the house. He'll quote it out. I'll email you the quote. And we got the closing already scheduled at Transformation Title or Apex Title. And I'm going to start sending you this deal. This looks kind of good. It looks like it might cash flow X amount of dollars, but please run it through your own calculator. But let me know. We can pull the trigger and get the closing done. Yeah, and then I'll send you over to this guy who's going to get your financing done.
That's what I was about to say. You get your property analysis, and then you send it to your loan officer, and you say, hey, John, I'm looking at this property. I'm buying it for this. I'm going to fix it up this. I think it's going to be worth this at the end. What can you refi me? What will the monthly payment be? Let them go to work. You don't have to find all this stuff out on your own.
And you're sitting in your comfy clothes on the couch with a glass of wine, and you can make money. And you don't even have to step in the house. In Clarksville, in 2020 and 2021, it seemed like every other house I inspected was from a California or Washington state buyer. They were just buying up houses like crazy. Never saw it. Might get a video walkthrough at the most, but all they cared about was how much can I get it for? What do I need to put in to fix it up? And how much can I rent it for? That's really it.
Those 2 houses with basements, I bought it before I'd ever seen it in person.
So that, to me, that's a little daunting. I'm a bit of a control guy. I want to go walk the house and look at it and smell the smells and everything. But eventually I'll let go of that part. But, you can call other, if you read the news and you see that there's a lot of people buying houses in Chattanooga, like there's a big boom in Chattanooga, you can call a real estate agent down there and say, hey, if there's any distressed properties, can you send them to me? And we're really interested. We're real estate investors. Send me what you got. You don't have to see it. Maybe you want to take a drive down there. Maybe you don't. But if they send it to you, you look it over and it passes the smell test. Do you have a contractor? All right. Who do you guys use for title? You can use a finance guy anywhere, but you pay attention to things like that when they're talking about a mass migration to a different area. Like a lot of the blue states are losing people to the red states. Start calling those real estate agents up and have them sending you deals. That could be the way you're getting deals sent to you so you can run it through your own calculator. That way you don't have to spend your time looking for properties. Somebody's sending them to you, and then just run it through.
100%.
So the other thing I was going to ask you, and when you're the legal aspects of this, now to protect yourself, are you putting any of your properties in LLCs? Are you just winging it?
No,
do you have an individual LLC for every property? Because I've heard guys doing that.
So Tennessee is one of 8 states that recognize what's called a series LLC. So what that is basically LLC, limited liability company, or corporation, whatever verbiage you want to use. What it comes down to is like, hey, this house is owned by this LLC, not Andrew. I don't own it, but I am the manager of that LLC. From a liability standpoint, someone slips and falls or has coffee too hot in the front driveway and wants to sue you, they're not suing you, they're suing that LLC. It's a form of protection. And when it comes to legal stuff, I mean, obviously none of us are doing this or renting out property to be shady and hurt anybody. But in the event that someone wants to be shady and hurt you to get your house, you have to be protected. So all those properties, even the flip houses, were in an LLC. I have a couple LLCs, but under the parent company, Premier Property Solutions, I had rental properties. Each one was its own series. And when you do it properly, if someone, on 123 Main Street, if someone, slips and falls in the front yard and tries to sue me, they can't sue me for all these other properties. They can't sue me for my house or any of that because it's protected under a series LLC. They can't even sue Premier Property Solutions. They can only get this piece of the pie right here.
Yeah. So you want to protect your personal assets. You want to, especially, if you are a W-2 and you've got a nice 401k or retirement, they can't touch any of that. That is a protection for you. Now, I don't think either one of us know everything about the setting up the LLCs and the series LLCs and C Corps and S Corps. I would highly suggest you talk to a real estate attorney and have them do the documents and paperwork, and get that all set up. But that is going to protect what you're trying to do, which is, build wealth.
And protect it.
And protect yourself. The other thing is, if you have this house in one LLC and you end up selling that house, you can dissolve that LLC. And if somebody who bought that house wants to sue, well, that entity no longer exists. There's no one to sue. It's gone. You can't touch Andrew. He had it at 123 Main Street LLC. He sold that to you. You can try to sue that entity, but it's been dissolved. It no longer exists, so there's nothing there for them. So that's a protection for you to keep you, protected from this very litigious society we have now, where they'll sue over just about anything just to get you to settle. Yeah. So definitely something to put on your radar if you're going to get started down this road. Get your protection in place for what you already have. Yeah. Is that something you constantly need to refer back to an attorney for? Or really, once you go in a series, you can just kind of cut and paste?
Yeah, and there's an argument to be made that, depending on how many doors you get, some people only put 10 in a series, some people put 20 in a series because, protection or what have you. But really a series is recognized as, it's instead of you paying $500 a year for each LLC, pay $500 a year for this LLC, and then now each of these are their own entities.
And that LLC is running those entities, and that's being run by a parent.
Yeah.
A parent company.
It's all part of the legal process, just knowing the black and white.
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend you talk to a real estate attorney and tell them what your goals are, and just say, hey, how can I best protect my personal assets and my family? And they'll take the ball and run with it from there, and run with it for you. When people are viewing or looking at properties and evaluating, what do you think the biggest pitfall is that people consistently fall into?
I think for me, it's the misnomer about cash flow. Kind of what I was explaining earlier. Everyone thinks, like your gross rents are $2,000 and your mortgage is $1,500. Oh man, I'm making $500 cash flow. Anyone you talk to with a rental property, they're like, yeah, $500 a month cash flow. It's not cash flow, dude. Actually, you're negative cash flow. If I showed you on a calculator, and we're being realistic and we're being honest, like you're not. You're losing money every month, which is fine if you understand that. But if you think that $500 is going to go into that account, times 12 months, $6,000 this year, and for the next 5 years, you think that at the end of 5 years, $30,000 is going to be in that account? I'll bet you 100 it's not. That's not. It's just not how it works. I mean, if 1 month it goes unrented, your cash flow is gone. Like 2 months, 3 months, you're negative. So that's why we put into place those calculators, the Bigger Pockets podcast, and they'll explain to you what they, whether it's YouTube podcasts or on there, like what they recommend, even in that little calculator. Hey, we recommend this. We recommend 20% for expenditures on a house older than 1980. We recommend, if it's been built in the last 3 years, only 10% for that. Like just stuff like that you'll know. The more you analyze those properties, the closer you get to the actual number.
So some of the things beyond just property management is typically 10%. Sometimes you can find it cheaper, somewhere between 8 and 10%. Capital expenditures like HVAC goes out. You have to have heat in the home. AC is optional, but you have to have heat in the home. So if you don't have 10 grand lying around, you're going to want to start putting some of that cash flow towards that. What are some of the other things?
So I mean, you have appliances. An argument can be made if you're first starting out, you could get a home warranty, but if you've ever fought with the home warranty companies, like to get your money back, you're going to work for it. So when I first started, I didn't have money saved back in an account, so I had a home warranty. I just kept it going on that house for a few years, and I finally gave up. And I'm like, all right, well, that's a waste of money. But depending on your situation. So then you have so those are your capital expenditures. Then you have expenses like a low water leak, a tree branch fell in the yard,
bad wind and it took shingles off.
Yeah, just the small piddly stuff that the renter is not going to fix. I mean, you might get lucky and get a renter that's like, oh, I'll fix all this stuff, but don't count on it. Don't plan for it.
And don't count on them fixing it right.
Yeah, and then vacancy. Like, what kind of neighborhood is this house in? What kind of shape? If it's a nice house, it's probably not going to be vacant very often. But if it's, in a C or D neighborhood, like there's probably good.
Well, your duplex in Nashville.
Yeah.
Something you may not be considering, but drive-by shootings, and they shot the place up.
Yeah. And I had to deal with that.
Had to fix it. Obviously, the renters didn't feel safe. They had to move out. Now you got vacancy, and you got bullet holes you got to fix.
Both sides vacant and bullet holes. So
gotta love it.
But again, to me, that wasn't life happening to me. It was for me. I learned a lot during that process. At first, you hear it, you're just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But you find your way through it, and I'm smarter because of it, or feel that way. And then the last thing would be vacancy. 10% minimum. If the rent is $2,200 a month goes towards when it goes vacant, because at the end of the year,
that mortgage is still due.
Yeah, mortgages still due. So when you really start adding it up, I think that's where people mess up, because appreciation you can't control, loan pay down you kind of control, but you don't babysit it. The tax write-offs, CPA's doing it. He's telling you what you're writing off. You're just along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you can make mistakes with real estate and still make money.
Absolutely. And some of the other things, we had talked about house hacking, like, living in the basement, renting upstairs. Well, that house is only going to have one electric meter, one water meter. Who's paying are you covering the water and the electric? Are you splitting it? I mean, if it's just you downstairs and there's a family of 4 upstairs, I don't know that 50-50 would be fair. Mm-hmm. So are you taking all that expense on and then just tacking it on the rent, asking a little bit more for that and just saying utilities are free? One of my clients, they cable was ran to the house, but these folks still had a satellite dish, and they went up on the roof themselves and they screwed it into the roof, which caused roof leaks. Because they didn't do it right, and Bubba got up there with his DeWalt one day after a 6-pack, and he just screwed the heck out of the thing right into the roof. Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful with things like that. But you've got to look at each house. Is trash? Is it a municipality trash where it's free, or it's part of the water bill, or is it like Clarksville where it's a separate charge? Who's going to cover that? HOA fees.
HOA, that's another.
Are you going to cover that?
Is in those expenses that you didn't?
These are all these little things that chip away at that $500 you think you're going to cash flow. Yeah. Like I said, right now it's very difficult to find a true cash flowing property because of all those factors and the fact that the market value of houses has gone up. So people want a premium price for it, which is going to erode your cash flow.
Yeah, but I will say right now is the right time to start learning about BRRRR investing because rates are about to come down. Like the Fed had a meeting yesterday, and they didn't say what's going to happen, but everything is showing signs that in September there's going to be a rate cut, which a lot of people think the Fed control the rate. The Fed doesn't control the rates. The bond market does. So the volatility and everything is what's affecting mortgage rates right now because no one is sure of what's going to happen tomorrow, so they don't want to lose money. So the information that's put out by the Fed, information of the stock market, information of all that is what, the 10-year Treasury, if you're watching it, mortgage rates actually mimic the 10-year Treasury. So once those mortgage rates start trickling down, which they will, as long as the economy, isn't booming or, really in the gutter, they're trying to have this soft landing and keep it coming. So September rates are going to get better. Towards the end of the year, rates are going to keep getting better as long as everything stays the way it is now. Early next year, rates are going to be a lot better than today. Like it's trending that way. And that's when the crossing point of people that are selling these houses that need work and the market's not really appreciating the houses kind of
takes a little bit for the market to catch it with all the influx of buyers.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is now once those rates come down enough, people are going to be buying again. And then the house prices are going to start trickling. So you're kind of at that perfect crossroads to where if you find the right deal, people are scared. They're willing to give you a good deal on it, and interest rates suck, but you can marry the house and date the rate. You can always refi later. That's what one of the R's are. So, I mean, you get the right deal. If it's zero cash flow, or even a little bit negative, and you can be okay with eating that and just hang on. I'm not saying stretch yourself to where you're taking food off the table, but you can wait a year and refi it, and then all of a sudden it goes from zero cash flow to 200.
And plus, you're always increasing rents every year, so that cash flow will come back. If you really want that asset, and it's going to be a negative cash flow of $100 or $200, I know folks that'll jump on that in a heartbeat because next year rent's going to go up, and that it's going to chip away constantly. But you have that asset for now, and that's yours. And and they're still paying down the mortgage. There's it's still appreciating. You're still getting the tax benefits. It's chewing up $100 or $200 a month. You spend that on bourbon a month. But, it's just acquiring that asset and getting it in your portfolio. And eventually you're going to get to the part where somebody like Andrew's getting out of the game and you buy his entire portfolio and just take it all over. It's a beautiful thing there.
Yeah, they do.
Does anybody have any questions? Just threw a lot on you. Go ahead. What's your question? Oh, you just said you have a lot?
Yeah, I'm processing.
Okay. Well, you'll get our contact information when we're all done here, and you're more than welcome to text or email, however you want, and answer any questions you want anytime you have them. Any final thoughts or anything on there?
I feel like I talked a lot. I'm good.
He's not a talker. This is very good. Does anybody have any questions at all? All right. Well, if no questions, I really appreciate you guys showing. Everybody who's watching live, I appreciate you being there. We'll see you guys next month. Thanks a lot, Andrew. Appreciate you showing up, man.
Appreciate it.